There's a little ditty they're singing in the city, and da 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 da. Oh, I wish I could remember the lyrics to that song. Little Percy Snodgrass would often have the odd glass. You know what that's from, right, Kevin?
No idea, Simon.
Papa, everyone knows. Papa, that's how it goes.
I'm going to Willy Wonka at this point.
No, it's not Willy Wonka. No. It is Oliver.
Oh, can I have some more, Simon? Can I have some more?
Yeah, don't say it like that again.
They did it bad in the movie. They should.
They weren't that bad. Oliver was all right because it was all Brits. It was Mary Poppins with Dick Van Dyke, who actually sent an apology to the UK after that film for his such appalling his really bad accent, his bad English accent.
When I studied in Sheffield, England, I attempted the accent, and I remember they looked at me and said, "Oh, are you Canadian?"
That's because most British people know that the biggest insult you can give an American is, or actually, I think it's the biggest insult you can give a Canadian is say that they're American.
There you go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Friday with Friends. Woo! This is my guest, Kevin Cordi. Wow! Thanks for being here, everyone. That was a bit of a cold opening, I think, as they say, right? Not quite Saturday Night Live, but no, absolutely nothing like Saturday Night Live. Anyway, thanks for being here. Kevin, I don't know if you want to turn your notifications off so we don't keep hearing that ding, because I know that's not me.
If I knew how, but you know.
Okay, don't worry about it. Then we'll just listen to it. Don't worry about it. I know that you're a Luddite who likes to struggle with technology. So if you are here with us, I know that there's at least 8 people here that are viewing. If you want to say hello, tell us who you are and where you are. We want to know where Jessica is. She's in Virginia because Jessica's a good friend of mine.
Doing great work.
She is doing great work. She's doing amazing work. So yeah, do pop a little note in there and say hi, and I'll pop it up. So yeah, Kevin, we've known. So I put in the thing that it was 2014, but I also knew that really wasn't true because we've known each other for much longer than that. Hooray to Kevin, Rachel Hedman in.
Right. Yeah, we've known. I think all the way back to Sharing the Fire, and even though I was teaching at California at the time, I always tried to come back to New Hampshire because there was amazing things going on, and they're great storytellers, you included, and good friends.
Thank you. Yeah. I reckon it was like 2006, somewhere around there.
I want to say yes.
Yeah. So we've known each other for a good long time, and actually, Kevin and I roomed 1 year together at the National Storytelling Conference.
It would be called conference, yes. And it was a time that I debuted a story.
It was.
Which was an hour-long story. And my first audience was all professional storytellers at the National Storytelling Conference. And Simon gave me notes beforehand where I did a one-man show of all the people that Houdini met. and Houdini was there for one sentence.
And that was like right at the end, wasn't it?
Yeah.
When he died.
Yeah, or some say he came back.
Yeah, right. So Lauren says that he's not that you're not the only neo-Luddite, and that Lauren is reluctant.
All right, Lauren, we're a team. Even though we have to step into technology because it's advancing toward us.
I know, right? Leaps and bounds. Yeah, and that was a good story.
Oh well, thank you.
Yeah,
thank you.
It was a good story. It was fun to get. I honestly think I had the debut in the hotel room as you. Like 2 hours before he was going live with that.
Well, the funny thing is, I spotted there's a secret Houdini museum in New York that if you don't know it's there, you will not find it, because I was among a bunch of people, and I walked in, and the guy said, "Hey, when you have that show, you come in and you can do it right here." And like all Houdini props and everything else is there. So I'm trying to work it up so that I can do it there. But it is secret, yes. There were people.
So they don't advertise it?
They do, as far as I can tell, there's no sign, there's nothing. You have to go in the building, you have to go in the second floor. It's also a magic shop, but they advertise not at all.
That's so funny. I mean, there's a certain irony to that, isn't it? I mean, he's an escape artist and has all these secrets.
Yeah, one of the cool things that he has is a letter from his brother that shows that Houdini was shot in the hand. And it says in the letter, and that's the reason Houdini could escape cuffs. It's a cool museum. I'll tell you the secret sometimes, Simon.
All right. Yeah. When we get together in person again, that would be good. That would
hopefully
be good.
Soon. Yes.
Yeah. Rachel said that we need to find a magician, and they'll let us know where it is. And I actually,
in my research, I met many magicians. In fact,
I bet you did.
Walking away from here, there's another secret magician place, and every Friday magicians fly in so they can do their video shows. And I didn't know this when I was doing this, but all over the world they come 2 doors down from me, or like the road down from me, just to sample their tricks and get the videos.
That's so funny.
It's crazy.
Magicians and their secrets. They're like
very.
They should be. Yeah, they're like the CIA or something like that. Like,
well,
if I tell you my real name, I will have to make you vanish.
Houdini was said to be a spy when he came to England. Yes, I could spend the whole hour talking about Houdini, but
let's not do that. I mean, it's a fascinating conversation. Maybe one day we'll advertise it as a Houdini show, and then you can do your show, maybe. So debut's doing well. What the next one's on Sunday, right?
This Sunday, 2:00 Eastern Daylight Time, and Simon's been on debut.
I was the debut of debut.
It was. He was the inaugural debut of Fusion of Storytelling and Play, and we have some people coming up, and so I'll just give a hint. They're going to see. This time we're going to see Mindy Donner, Andrea Kamens, and Joe Conrad out of Ohio. And I'll announce, because we're here, we're also going to see next month Ingrid Nixon, Laura Palmer, and Stas Zalgowski.
Nice.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing time, and it's unique, as you know, Simon, because no one's telling the story for the first time and getting coached and playing with the story at the same time. So we invite people to debut to be on it. Mo Reynolds, I hear, yes, it's good to see her as well. And we're going to have events that bring people all over.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. Mo's a really good storyteller. It's kind of funny because she asked me to coach her, and I was like, sure. Or maybe I offered to coach her, and she said, sure. I can't remember. Maybe it was that way around. I said, do you want me to coach you? And she said, yes. And she told this story. I was like, there's not much. This is freaking awesome.
I love it. But even awesome has directions to go, as you know. And I haven't had the pleasure of hearing her live, but I've watched some videos, and she can capture a moment. She really can.
Yeah, she's really good. Tom, hey, or is it Karen? Who knows? It's one of the two. They share each other. I love it. Oh, thank you. Yes. So I did a couple of kids shows this morning at the elementary school in Woodruff, South Carolina. Of course, I wasn't in Woodruff, South Carolina. I was here in New London.
That's Stone Soup territory.
Yeah. Karen and Tom are Stone Soup, and it was part of the Stone Soup Festival, which, by the way, will be on Saturday night. So go to Stone Soup, South Carolina, Woodruff. Go to their website and buy your tickets now, because, it helps.
Definitely.
If people buy tickets.
And it's a great festival. And it also supports youth. Rickson Lane is from Stone Soup territory. And last I heard, he was, he'd finished college, and he was announcing at ball games. And I'm sure he's doing a lot, even more. But Rickson was amazing. He also told at the National Storytelling Festival.
Nice. That's
fun. And I helped coach him a little. So that was fun.
Oh, I bet. Isn't it kind of cool when you see these up-and-coming talent and you can say, I knew them when?
It is. I've coached a Miss, I can't remember if it's Miss Florida, and people have went on the film. And
you've coached Miss Florida?
Yeah, I don't know if it's Florida. I have to check my notes. I don't worry about the states, but she was an amazing teller when she was 15. I'm sure she's doing fine now.
She used to be Miss Florida, but now she's fine. So Rachel Hedman remembers hearing Rickson Lane live at the National Youth Storytelling. So there you go. Yeah.
Which I used to host, and Rachel was on the executive team of helping there as well.
Oh, well,
now
that
it's in
makes
Utah.
sense. See, I didn't realize that Rachel had been like a professional storyteller from the age of like 12 or something like that.
Yes, she worked with forensics and storytelling, and I'm happy to say when she came to California that we worked very closely together and worked with the guilds and the National Youth Storytelling. I mean, she's a living dynamo. She
is,
and she's doing great work. Shout out to Rachel Hedman.
She's. There are some people in this world. I thought I've said this before, and I'll say it again. Who just they can have like 12 children and 4 jobs and 18 hobbies and get it all done. And she says that she doesn't sleep very much, but I don't think that's the reason. I just think that there are some people that are wired that way. Rickson created the storytelling game Tell Off that takes an hour to play. I'll have to look that up. There are some good storytelling games out there. That's for sure. I like the dice, where you shake the dice and you roll them and it has these little pictures on them and you make a story up from it.
Richard Stone created a board game called Fib or Not, which is also a really good way of moving inside story. And the story cubes, I think you're also talking about.
Yeah, that's what they're called. Yeah, the story cubes. I couldn't think of what they were called, but yeah, I like the story cubes. They're fun. You take them into schools, and then if you've got some like fidgety child, it's like you give them those and a mat, and then they're like crack, 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 crack.
Well, Simon, I had to find games all the time because, I mean, some storytellers, they go to schools and communities, but for 11 years, I taught a full-time storytelling curriculum. So I'm like constantly looking at the games and how to teach, where to go. So staying aware, being a story teacher as well as a teller helps.
Right. So I always... despite all your official titles, I always see you as like a huge champion of storytelling. You try to get as many people telling stories in all sorts of different ways as much as possible. How did you what made you take that route? What made you say, I have to make a world filled with storytellers, by golly?
Well, I appreciate that. We all work together. But when I was 18, I was at Kent State University, and there was the Once Upon a Time Storytelling Conference Festival. And at that time, Bat Burns, the Irish teller, came in and he told an amazing tale. And I grew up listening to stories from my mother on a dilapidated old couch, all 5 brothers and sisters. And that's really where my degrees come from, is still listening to my mother from Appalachia telling those stories. But when I got to this conference, I was studying to be a teacher journalist. And I was amazed. There were 300 people and they were old. They were 40. I couldn't believe people would make that age. It was
ancient now. Holy cow.
Well, and I watched these 300 strangers. I was just supposed to go in and cover the story for 5 minutes, but I begged the person I answered to. I said, "There's something here. I need to answer to this." And so I stayed for the entire week and watched those ancient people become even more real, more compassionate with story. And then, Simon, it got up and left, and I was alone. I fell in love with the folks and the fairy tales and Rebecca Hill's clog dancing, which I thought was something you do with a sink, but evidently it's a whole different thing.
Well, it depends on how badly it's stuck, I suppose.
Yeah, that's true. So an hour and a half, or excuse me, a year and a half, there was nothing. I kept learning from tapes with just a name on it. It said J. O'Callahan. It said Jackie Torrance. It said Folk Tellers. It said Donald Davis. And I would I would borrow the tapes from the library and just learn them and mimic Elizabeth Ellis. And so it took me a year and a half to find a guild, and it was a lonely time. And J. O'Callahan once said to me, storytelling can be a lonely business. And I don't think it should. I think we need to network, and I know what it was like to be one of the youngest tellers telling on the circuit. I don't want anyone to ever feel that. So I started studying, and I started learning and listening to my ancient people.
Well elders. Let's use the word elders.
Yeah, I'm just wisdom keepers is even better.
Yeah, there you go. Wisdom keepers. I like
but
that.
honestly, people like Donna Kaczynski and a number of different people, and little did I know that I would become a teacher of storytelling. But when I first started in the high school, I kept teaching and telling separate because I thought, oh, they wouldn't embrace that. But honestly, I was not the king of discipline. But if I looked at these high schoolers and I said, let me tell you a story, there was no discipline problem.
Yeah.
They came together to listen, because many times students feel voiceless in schools. And so I've been on a crusade or champion with others, with many others. Just I don't want anyone to feel lonely because they found story, and it doesn't have to be by themselves.
Yeah, that's beautiful statement. Rachel Hedman commented, storytelling never has to be a lonely business. Yes, there is solo telling, but never alone.
But it doesn't always have to be solo telling either. I do a thing called Ensemble Storytelling, where I'll put 30 people on stage. I'll work with them for about 40 minutes, and we co-create a story together, and we perform it for 400 people.
Wow. So that's one story that you create?
Yes. Or we use a traditional backbone of a folktale, and I take all the ideas. I was trained in story improv, and story play and directing that. And I take all these ideas, and they do more than hold a bell or a whistle, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they create the story with me, and we perform it for everyone. But my role is less the storyteller and more the story mediator, as I mediate the story so that it makes sense and has fluidity.
Right. Well, I think all storytellers are story mediators.
Well, they should be.
We have that, yeah, right, because we have the story inside us, and all we're doing is mediating the way that it comes out.
Yes, and the audience, I've heard many tellers say the audience disappears when the story is told. Or I'm sorry, the teller disappears. The audience disappears. Nobody's telling anymore. What's going on?
The audience has left the room.
The teller's by himself again. Get that jacket on. The teller disappears and the audience goes to the story. Someone said to me, why is an ADHD or a student with special needs able to listen to someone for 45 minutes and won't listen to a class? And I had to think long and hard of that. And I said, because they can interpret it at the rate that they want as they hear it.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. The amount of scores, I think anyone that's a storyteller, which is like most of our audience, I think probably right now, or at least a good 90% of it.
Or some going, what is this? I thought this was the Home Shopping Network.
Yes. I don't think so. I don't think anyone's going to tune in and think that. But anyway, I should put your name up for those people that I just thought about that.
And for me to remember it.
Yes, I'll move you over there so that it doesn't look like I'm you, and then I'm going to have to turn around this way, I think.
But now they're wondering who you are, Simon.
So that way. Oh, they don't need to know who I am. They will know who I am. There we go. And what was I talking about? Yes. So when you go into schools and the teachers, they'll say, "Watch out for so and so and so and so. They're trouble," and it's like, we'll see. And you go in, and there might be a little pushback, but then they just fall into it, and it's like you're saying, these kids that have, some of these kids, at home it's like, do this, do that, be quiet, they don't get a chance to speak at home, and they get to school and it's do this and do that, and it's all the same thing at school. And then you have a storytelling class with them, and you ask them to tell stories, and for the first time they're not only able to tell their own stories, but they're actually actively listened to. And that's, to me, that's just gold.
But also when we give them space to tell. I had a student, Maggie, and I said, Maggie was an honor student. I said, I want you to go out and I want you to find someone who asked for your story. And 3 weeks later, she came and she was red in the face, and she said, I either don't understand the assignment or I can't do it. Outside of your storytelling class, no one's asked my opinion, let alone my story. And I went to the principal. I said, this is a problem. And she said, we'll have a meeting on that. You ever been to a meeting that never showed?
Yes.
And actually, that's why
No.
Judy and I wrote that book called Raising Voices, so that we could give
Ah,
students that voice.
that's that's a good book. That is a good book. I didn't realize that that's
I
why
like
you
it.
did it, but that makes sense. Yeah. Well, you should. You wrote it. In fact,
Just
that's
kidding.
what other you've written a few books, haven't you? I got one of them over there. Which one have I
Uh,
got?
I wrote Playing with Stories, story crafting for writers, teachers, and
That
other imaginative thinkers.
yeah, that's
And you're in it, I believe.
maybe that's why I've got it.
And my most recent one is You Don't Know Jack, A Storyteller Goes to School. And there's two coming up that I've edited on social justice and tomorrow's storytellers today, working with tellers that are 35 and under.
That's not me. I'm old.
36, right? You're ancient.
I am. I'm close
One
to
of the
60,
ancient
50
ones.
now. I know. I'm ancient. Well,
I got
but
53 on you.
I have all my teeth except two of them are gold capped. It's like my Go Faster stripe in my mouth because it's the top and bottom are in the same space and they're both gold capped. So,
Oh, we should.
I'm a pirate. Rah, rah, rah. So how have you been how have you been coping during the pandemic?
Oh, well, that's a good question because
Been doing all right?
I'm an advisor as well as a assistant professor, and I learned that story was going to help me connect with those students that were panicking. Instead of saying, you missed this assignment online, I've tried to make learning not distant but connected. Distant learning I don't like. Connected learning. And so I had a student recently said she was going to transfer, but she's going to miss our class because instead of listening to a professor drone on, she said, you ask every one of us as we came on how we feel, where are we, and a lot more follow-up. And
Yeah.
I didn't do it as well as I wanted to do, but I at least made it part of the agenda that how they were as important as the content that I was teaching.
Yeah.
But you asked about me, so
Yeah, I did.
I've been, shut in a bit, but I found that I've been working with restored citizens, people who've been going to prison every Friday. I've been coaching them on on the stories that they couldn't tell inside, and I've worked on a Hawaiian education series. And my wife and I like to take walks, and just relax a little. But it's been hard, like anybody on the pandemic. I want to get outside and just shout out, yeah!
There's lots of things I'd like to shout out about
But I think
outdoors.
we're, and I'm not going to say turning the corner because people have said that. I don't want to hear say that, but
Yeah,
we are moving toward the light.
we are. Yeah, I would agree with that. It's interesting because uh, let's just not talk about that.
You brought it up.
I know. I'm talking about like the getting closer to the end thing. I was walking Mo yesterday. There's this woman who in town who has a dog, and Mo and I we quite often take the same trail up through the woods, and there's a switchback, right, that goes up the top of this hill, and then it's kind of like up and downy, but up and downy all the way down to the bottom. It's about a 2 mile walk, but it gets your heart going in places, that's for sure. And there's this woman who is in her 70s, who pretty much sprints up that hill, right? Which she is a tour de force. She was probably like Rachel Hedman in her youth, right? She was just like one of those people that could do like a million things and just be like, I'm ready to do the next thing now, right? And she and we were walking. Basically, Mo wasn't coming up the hill after me, and I'm like, why is she not coming up there? She kept turning around and looking back, and then I hear Daisy, and this big old golden retriever glumps up the hill, and I'm like, now I know why Mo's not coming up there. And she joined us, and she said, I'm in a bit of a rush, so if you don't have to keep up if you don't want, because I got a 20-pound camera bag on my back, right? Wow. And I'm like, I can keep up. And on the way down, we were talking about mask mandates and all that kind of stuff, and it's interesting how people look at it. There was a sports event at the school the other day, outdoors, and the policy of the school is masks must be on, and this guy wasn't putting his mask on, and it's like, it doesn't hurt you to put a mask on
Yeah.
for a sports event, right? It doesn't. Like, why can't you just do it? It's not a big deal, right? If you don't, if you don't want to wear it outside of the school premise, that's fine, whatever. But like, if there's a sign somewhere that says wear a mask, blooming well wear a mask. I mean, it's not rocket science. It's just like belligerence and stupidity and arrogance, I think. But anyway,
It says more about the resistance than it does anything else. And
it's not. I don't think it's even that half the time. I mean, yes, with some people, but anyway, I don't want to talk about politics.
okay, no worries.
There's enough of
Fast
that going
forward.
on.
I will tell you this, that well, maybe I shouldn't tell you, but I'll tell you anyway. I was visiting someone in the hospital yesterday. She's like 82 years old, and she's very conservative. And I said, well, it's my wife's mother-in-law, and I said, what's the secret to good living? And she yelled at the top of her lungs, sex.
Nice.
I've never heard anything like that from her. It was really interesting.
Good for her. Good for her. So years ago, I used to work in a youth hostel, and I decided for some strange and bizarre reason, instead of taking the winter off, because the hostel would close in the winter, and I wouldn't be paid, but I would, when you live in a hostel, you get fed by the hostel, you can save up all your money. I decided to work at a hotel with a friend of mine who got a job there, and I met this guy. He was I think he was 101 or something like that, and he was old and frail, which at 101 is totally respectable. His glasses were like the bottoms of milk bottles attached to the bottoms of Coke bottles, right? And I asked him, I was like, can you, because he was waiting for a cab to take him somewhere, and I'm standing with him. I was like, so can you see, and like, how far can you see? I'm just curious, and because I'm still that idiot that asks inappropriate questions. And he's like, well, if you were to stand still, I might not know that you were a person. I was like, okay. And so I asked him, like, what was his secret to longevity? And he said prunes was one thing, and he would sit on a swing, but straddle it and swing sideways. And he said, when I'm not visiting hotels, that's what I do at home. I have a swing and I straddle it and I swing sideways. And it's all to do with your inner the movement of your inner organs and how they all it kind of reshuffles them and gets them all centered again.
Wow.
And it was just like, wow, that's. And then the other thing that I asked him, because this was back in the 80s when this happened. Well, actually, it was the 90s. Yeah, it was the 90s, and I asked him what he thought, because he lived through a great deal of change. I was like, what's the biggest change that you've seen? He says, women. And I was like, could you expand on that? And he said, women. When I was a child, women used to be in the kitchen, and now they're all out all over the place with their short skirts and everything. And I was like, so is that a good thing or a bad thing? He says, I think it's great. It's like, I can't even imagine how my mother must have felt chained to the kitchen, and like how much she would have enjoyed with the freedom that the women these days have. And I was like, wow. Yeah, hey, dude.
You mentioned the site. I was at, there's a place in Ohio here where many of the birds will migrate in this place in Ohio before flying across the ocean. You're going to press me where it is. I'm not sure. And this is my memory. I was going to see Brian Fox Ellis tell, and I walked in, and like bird watchers, hundreds and thousands, I mean, it might not be thousands, but they flock to this because it only happens for like a weekend. So I'm there, and these people have cameras as tall as me, and they have lenses as tall as me, and there's this 85-year-old man, and he looks over and he says, there's a blah, 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 blah. And I don't remember what the bird was. And all these people with these massive lenses saying, no, foolish old man, that's not there. There's nothing there. And so he's like, you need to look. You need to really look. It was 15 minutes. And I heard one of the people with the longest lens go, I'll be damned. It is there. So just because you're getting older doesn't mean your sight's leaving, or your faculties or anything else. It's just, and I was just reminded, and that was just an awesome time.
Yeah. There are some amazing people out there, some amazing wisdom keepers, as you call it. Yeah. Hang on, Rachel Hedman just put in a huge comment. I want to read this. Grandpa Hedman lived to 104 and for 10 years said that this was his secret. Microwave 1 glass of hot water, mix 2 tablespoons of clover honey, 1 teaspoon of McCormick cinnamon.
Oh, I've
Drink
seen.
morning and night faithfully, but it tastes awful. One of my sons likes it. Yeah, that doesn't sound so bad. Well, why in the microwave? Why not just like boil it up in a kettle or saucepan? Interesting that it has to be microwaved.
Hey, don't question it. He lived to 104.
Yeah, right. I do not want to live to 104. I'd be quite happy to make it to 90 at the most, and then I'll be done. That's cool. Yeah. So yeah, longevity. Interesting conversation. So Kevin, have you got any stories that have spoken to you lately that have like come alive for you?
It's funny because the story is about longevity.
Oh, really?
Yes, in a sense. Lately, I've been looking at stories, and I found a story that's just like, wow, I'll hold on to this. And you want me to tell it, I assume? Yes.
Yeah. But I was just thinking about any like stories generally that have popped open for you that might be like, oh, there's this really cool story, like Tatterhood did for me, right?
I've been accidentally falling into epics. I'll find a story. I found a Japanese story, an amazing story. And so I'm like, oh, this is a great, there you go. Hey, yes.
Talking of epics.
I did not intend to go into an epic. And then I started researching the version I was reading, and it was completely inaccurate. And I found that it was, there you go. It's one of the first Japanese tales ever.
Really?
Yes.
Recorded, though, presumably.
Oral tale. Oral tale.
Wow.
And then I fell into the one I'm about to tell you, which I didn't realize again was an epic.
So you're not going to tell a whole epic, are you? You're not going to take out the rest of the next 30
This isn't the 12-hour.
Okay, all right.
All right.
This is what is it called? I can't think of the name of it now. Like the cheat sheet that you get for high school and stuff.
The crib sheet.
Cliff Notes. Is this the Cliff Notes version? That's what I was looking for.
I heard this story by reading some of the epic, but also a book called Tales Told in Tense.
Oh, I've seen that book.
And it's Sally Pome Clayton, which I started researching. She's got some great stuff. So Injustice, I mean, I learned some of this story from what she said and from what the actual epic said. So with that, I
didn't know that was a Sally Pome book.
Yeah. Illustrated by Sophie Herheimer.
I'm gonna have to get that book. I'm trying to get Sally on this program. On
Great. Have you met her or seen her? Or?
Yeah. She was part of Hans Christian Andersen's story series last summer, and she's awesome. She's really nice. She's super nice, and she's a good storyteller. I
watched some videos, and she definitely stays true to tradition. Yeah. So with that, why don't I tell this story?
Why don't I shut up and let you tell a story, Kevin? How's that?
Corkut had the same dream every day since he was a child. Every day he would see a figure, a lone figure, and he knew that figure, for that figure was death. And every year that he lived, that figure would go closer into his dreams. And it was his 16th year, and that figure was at a breath's edge next to him. And he woke up and he startled. And he said, I have many more lives to live. Let age take me. I need to get away from death. And so he called out for his best friend. His best friend was a chestnut mare. And he called, he said, please just take me away. Take me away. And he grabbed the mane on the chestnut mare and rode off, and he rode off. And they say that mare was as fast as the wind. Indeed, it was. It rode places far and far away. And there he saw hundreds of people with spades, and they were digging a hole. They were digging a massive hole. And he said, why? Why are you digging this hole? And they all looked up at him at the same time and said, we're digging a grave for Kaku. That was his name. He said, leave, steed, take me away, take me away. And they say that horse rode as fast as the wind, and it did. And it rode and rode to another place far, far away. There were men and women and children digging with their spades and digging. And he said, why are you digging? And they all looked up and said, we're digging a grave for Kakut. That again was his name. And he said, steed, take me away, take me as far as you can go. And they say that horse would go as fast as the wind. And it did. It went all the way up to the sun, and there were blazing heat, but hundreds of people digging. We're digging a grave for Kakut. He ran to the moon, and on the moon, digging. We're digging a grave for Kakut. And the stars were digging a grave. He couldn't get away, and so he went back to Central Asia in Kazakhstan. And there he was. He saw a giant, sturdy tree, and he rested his head upon the sturdy tree. It was the first time in a long time that he rested, and he said, tree, surely you are so strong that death cannot be near you. And he answered, the tree answered and said, the birds peck me, and the slightest wind will separate my leaves. Death is here. And then he went to the steppe, which is the grassy lands, and he laid down on the fertile land. And he said, surely in this fertile land, death cannot be here. And the steppe said, the animals eat of my grass, and the boots stomp on me. Death is all around. And he said, steed, take me away, take me away. And he took him right in front of a mountain for which you could not see a sight line. It was so big and enormous. And he said, death, you cannot be here by this mountain. And the mountain said and bellowed, in the torrents of the wind, I could crumble at any time. Death is here as much as life. Oh, he said, steed, take me away, take me away. I need to be in a place that death is not there. I cannot bear it. And with that, his best friend, startled to get up, and just as fast crashed down. The legs would not work anymore. In fact, she could not work anymore. He ran to get her food and water, but by looking at her eyes, he could tell that death had already taken her. And he began to cry. He held his friend, the chestnut mare. He buried his face in her mane, and he cried and he cried. The tears formed on the land all a river. But he stood on a stone, and letting go of his chestnut mare, he went over to a tree, and he cut out a large block of wood that was pear-shaped. And he gently tore the horse's hair, and he braided it, and he put it from top to bottom, and he covered the pear-shaped box with horse's hair. And he took the branch, and he covered it with a horse's tail, and he cried. And he stood on the stone, and he took the horsehair fiddle and the horsehair bow, and he began to play. And it was unlike any music that anyone ever heard. It was authentic. And people looked up. And then he began to sing about his friend, the chestnut mare, and how much he missed her. And people stopped making scarves. The men stopped working the fields. Children stopped playing. And they began to come to see who was playing the music, who was singing the songs. He sang about warriors and wishes and princes. He sang about lost words, sunken treasures. He sang about victories and defeats. And most of all, He sang about his chestnut mare. The rocks themselves stood still. The river that he had made stood still. The birds stopped to listen, and hundreds and thousands of people flocked together. And at the far, far, far end, there was a lone shroud. He had seen the face before. It creeped closer and closer and closer and closer until it was at a breath's edge. And of course, it was death. And death stopped to listen. He never heard so much music, so much sound, so much beautiful songs that he quit his job that day. No one died as long as he sang about wishes and worries and princesses and his mare and victories and defeats. But his bones with each year became brittle, bent, and broken. His hair turned from auburn to gray to white, showing the wisdom of his words. And at that, he took his horsehair fiddle and his horsehair bow. He set it aside and invited death to take him. Death enveloped him in his arms. And there was much sadness for a long, long time. But it could have happened 100 years ago or 10 years ago. Someone picked up that fiddle and someone picked up that bow. And they began to play, and another person began to play, and they began to sing his songs and tell his stories of wishes and worries and princesses and lost treasures and victories and defeats and his mare. And for you see, he had escaped death, for they still tell Dede Kukut's stories all around the world. And they still sing his songs. And they say if you go near or by his gravesite by Kazakhstan, and you stand there long enough, you may become a poet or a storyteller. And you know, if he was here, and some say that he is, he would tell you to tell your stories, sing your songs, for they're powerful, for they can be a way that he turned from a boy to a man, and telling those stories and songs, he escaped death.
Nice. Whoops. That's not what I meant to do. I don't like that either. Let's do that. There we go.
Okay, all right. And that's from an epic of Dede Kabur. And it's fascinating. It's 12 stories that are long and just deeply detailed. And that's just a small snippet of it.
That's a really cool story.
Now, I have to tell you this, Simon. Okay. I've never told that story publicly. Wow. And I worked on it 2 days ago.
Good for you.
I wanted to give the spirit of play, just like in debut.
Right. So there you go. What a great story, Kevin. The every night dream is such a scary image.
Thank you, Jane. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I actually, Rachel Hebman. Hurrah!
Thank you, Rachel. Joey,
nice.
Good to see you.
Oh, good. Hey, there you go, Joey. Nice to see you. Fabulous telling, says Renee Kimray.
Thank you.
Yes. And we will. So Rachel, where is it? Rachel put up the Amazon link to it, to the book that you showed.
Good. Yes, we need to share it. And the app should be shared too, which is hard to find, by the way.
But then Jane said, Rachel, did you see the price? $900.
It's on eBay, a bit cheaper.
So of course, Renee Kimray, the librarian.
Yes.
Local library. Woo!
That's the reason stories are alive.
Yes, it's true. An origin. Yeah, that's what I was thinking. So is that an origin story of the fiddle then?
Oh yes. By the way, the fiddle is called a kobiz. Kobiz, and it is an origin fiddle, and it has, or at least in the tail, a horse head within the front of the fiddle. I started listening to some music, and it's absolutely beautiful. The fiddle itself and the way it sounds, it is just amazing. And I invite people to really listen to the Kobiz. It's hard to find, but yes, and it's also the origin story of the importance of story and horse, and significant to horses.
Right, because I would imagine. I mean, I don't know much of the Kyrgyzstan culture. Funnily enough, it's not one of those that I've actually looked at or studied yet. But I imagine that that horses do play quite a large part of the culture based on that story. The fact that
I would definitely think so, based on that story, and knowing a little bit about the area, how important horses are.
Right. Wow. That's a good one.
But some stories just tell you that you need to tell this one. And it's funny that you were talking about longevity, and this was the story I prepared.
I know, right? Longevity. Yeah, longevity. It is one of those things that I don't know. Some people want to live forever, and it's like that's not one of my wishes. I want to live well, and I want to live happily, but I do not want to live forever.
No. Being 1,000 and watching all this stuff go.
Yeah, I know, right? Probably yes. Anyway, that was a great story. And what was the name of that book or the epic? What is it again? Spell that for me.
Tales Told in Ten. Oh, the epic.
Yeah, the epic.
Cede.
Cede.
Try again. D as in like Daredevil. Dede.
Okay.
Korkut.
Kut.
Korkut.
Korkut. Got it. All right.
And I'm sure the people who own the epic are calling me right now. You can hear them.
That's right. They're saying you're mispronouncing it. It's
possible. I listened to some versions told, but they were in the accents of the people that lived.
Okay.
And so I tried to honor, and that's really important. But
yeah, no, I think it is. Yeah, absolutely. That's one of the things that, when I'm telling stories from India, I have a number of colleagues, friends who are over in India, and it's like, well, how do I pronounce this? So there's the story of Savitri.
Yes.
And I always thought, oh, it's Savitri. And it's not. It is Savitri. It is Savitri. And it's not Savitri.
Yeah, I would have thought this first one. Yeah.
Yeah. It's Savitri. And,
Simon, I think, after you tell stories for a while, do we gravitate to epics? I know Lauren's on the call. He goes towards some of the older tales as well, and his new tales. And by the way, check out his ghost story collection. Oh
yeah, he's I like his ghost stories.
But you're moving toward some of the older tales, and I'm moving toward. Are we getting older? What's going on?
I don't know. No, I think some of, I don't know. I have no idea. I think the stories call us, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Beowulf is an epic that I've always been, ever since I was, in my 20s, it was a story that I loved. And then Gilgamesh, I mean, that was, I only got called into that because of, I was reading what my kids were reading at school, and I was like, this is not Gilgamesh. This is, I don't know what this is, but it's not Gilgamesh. And so I had to go back and reread the book, or the story, the epic, and I was like, yeah, they're not learning it right. And that's when I decided to tell it, because someone's got to do the story justice, and whatever they're studying at my local school, high school and middle school, that's not the real.
No, they get a sanitized version unless people really.
It's not even sanitized. It's just like they really do Disneyfy it. It's like these 3 picture books, and it's awful.
And if you don't tell it out loud, why are you? Right. What are you doing with it? I
know. Guess what I'm doing the first week of. Guess what I'm doing the first week of May?
Gilgamesh.
I'm doing Gilgamesh. 3 performances.
One of the oldest epics. So that's one of the reasons I'm asking. I recently said that stories are roots and branches. And if we think about that, I think we need to know the roots. We need to know, Joel Chandler Harris. We need to go far back to the epics so that we can honor the stories, so that we can deliver. When I worked with young students, I remember working with telling a national teller. I said, working with teens for so long, They don't know the traditional rules of story, so it's fun to work with them because they break them. And I remember this national teller went, "I don't like that at all." They didn't really say it that way, but they did say, "I don't like that at all." And I thought, we need to be open to new awareness, so the story can evolve and change, and we can still honor tradition and the old epics. But what's wrong with doing story in rap? What's wrong with doing story on stilts? What's wrong with, praising story with a different kind of cadence than the old rhythms?
Yeah. No, I mean, so the epics, there's something sacred about the epics, right? That they have been told for that long, and they have been told in that way for so long. And I think with folk and fairy tales, I think absolutely, because they've changed and morphed before they were ever written down. I mean, we know that the version of Cinderella that Perrault collected, that wasn't the first version of Cinderella ever.
No,
it's like there were many, not even in that country, right? I mean, there's other versions that go way back. I've been working on Little Red Riding Hood with Lanny Peterson for this workshop, this class that we're creating. And, when you think about Little Red Riding Hood, the huntsman takes a gun, right? And it's like, well, has he always had a gun, or did he have a bow and arrow? Right?
Right.
Because if he has a gun, that puts it in a certain time place, because guns were invented at XYZ, 1500, something like that, I don't know. And like before then, what was the weapon of choice in the story before then? Because we know the story was told before then.
Simon, I got a call about Little Red Riding Hood. And they said, we want to tell to our children at a school the earliest versions that we could find. And so I started researching, like doing big research. I had 2 months before the show. And some of them I started reading on the plane, I'll be honest with you. And it was talking about Little Red Riding Hood and being a woman of the evening. And I was like, and I'm not sure this is the stolen story that they want to hear. And I'm
it's the same as Goldilocks and the Three Bears is the same, right?
Exactly. There's the roots there. Definitely.
The roots there. It wasn't a little girl. It was an animal, and which makes sense, because then it will be all animals in the same story. And the thing is like, originally she was a fox, and then she became a vixen, and then she became a vixen, and then she became a little girl, right?
See, I don't know that
like,
part.
Yeah. It's like, how did that tumble down to that? It's
that's another reason why we need to go back to the roots and branches. We need to, because we Disneyfy and we tell these other versions, and I just think some of them are very coarse, the originals, but beautiful kind of stopgap moments.
Yeah. Well, we were talking that before we went on air, which we won't bring up right now. Because, there was some very coarse.
That's the evening Friday with Simon at 2 in the morning.
Yes, that's the 9 o'clock cutoff time. That one is. Yeah, there was some. Yeah, right. I mean, there are some really amazing. I mean, I'm reading this book, right? Or I read this book, Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio by Pu Song Ling. And
you're not going to tell the book? Thank you.
You're welcome.
One of those.
And so he was alive between 1640 and 1715, and he was similar to Hans Christian Andersen. He wrote these fantastical fairy tales in the 16 and 1700s. And so, one of them I fell in love with, absolutely, hook, line, and sinker. And I'm going to be telling it. Actually, it's a horrible, shameful promotion here for
it's your show, Simon.
for TBD storytellers on Tuesday night. So there's a story, but it's quite erotic in its telling, and it's like, I'm never going to tell this story. And then we were talking about, what story are you going to tell for TBD on Tuesday? I was like, I'm going to do this story. It's the 8 o'clock cutoff time. Whoop! I'm doing it. So and
good stories have range.
They do.
You can reach. People are like, Tell this in 4 minutes. Okay, do you need it in 14 or 4 or 3? You know
Right.
that.
Well, that was Tatterhood with me, right? It's
Yes, I remember.
there's a lot going on in that story. You can tell it shorter, but boy, you can really stretch that story. That's a story that I'm totally and utterly in love with right now. It's
I had
absolutely
fun working with you on that.
that was fun working with you on that one too. It was fun working with you on too. Well, we've come to the almost the top of the hour,
Oh
and
wow.
we never talked about pop music. Let's talk about. We said we're going to talk about pop music, so by golly, we're going to talk about pop music.
All
Kelly,
right. Did
what
you
kind of music did you grow up with?
Pat Benatar? And I remember having a black jacket and a chain wallet. I loved the color black at that time. Billy Joel and Glass Houses, and
Oh, there you go.
but then Blood on the Tracks with Bob Dylan, and this isn't exactly pop music. But Deborah
Well,
Harry was considered pop at one point, not anymore. And someone once told me she was the first rap singer, and I didn't think so. But she did rap with an album called Cuckoo, not just a man from Mars goes to bars, but an album before that. So there's amazing. I when I was a college I was a this is WKSR 7:30 a.m. I tell stories that you want to hear and that you don't want to hear. This is a moment in music, and let me tell you about Bruce Oscar Springsteen. That's why he's called the boss, Bruce Oscar Springsteen.
that makes. Oh, okay. Yes.
And I don't know. That's what a book said. I don't know if it's true, but that's why the boss is the boss.
That's funny. Yeah, yeah. So, but you didn't. So I'm thinking like before then. So I grew up when I grew up. You know, my mum listened to a lot of jazz, and Elvis Presley and Buddy Holly and Glenn Miller, Count Basie, Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong. So I think Louis Armstrong was probably the first rapper.
Oh yeah.
You know, so I grew up listening to a lot of that stuff. And, you know, Herman and the Hermits was on the radio, you know, because it would be, you know.
My dad was Italian, so we heard Mario Lanza at the top of the lungs. And,
oh, wow.
Yeah. But then at the same time, I grew up with classic country. And then I didn't like country and came back to it and like some and don't like some. But, you know, so it was Pat Benatar and Conway Twitty, you know. I don't know.
Well, that's like, you know, that's kind of like me when I grew up. You know, there was all that kind of stuff. I listened to a lot of the Beatles, of course. My mum was into the Beatles. I have the original Rubber Soul vinyl album.
Oh wow!
Which is awesome in mono, which is awesome.
So, I mean, this is almost. Do you think that the Beatles are going to have the mainstay? I mean, I've talked to students that don't know the Beatles anymore.
There might be, yeah, but there are also kids that do know the Beatles. So my son,
much.
he just turned 21, right, this weekend, and he and a couple of his friends are very much into the Beatles. Now I don't know if that's because me as a parent, I wasn't, you know, I made my kids listen to all sorts of different music other than Raffi. I never played Raffi to them. But I've played them, you know, a bit of Dwight Yoakam. They weren't really into that much.
Bakersfield, I used to teach in Bakersfield.
Oh, you did? Okay.
That's Dwight Yoakam and Buck Owens Country.
Okay, and a bit of Katie Lang.
They married each other's wives.
Well, yeah, that happens in music,
or one
business,
or the other,
right? Yeah. You know, so my kids listen to, as Tom says, the Rolling Stones, right?
Sure.
The Rolling Stones.
But the Stones are forever.
Yeah.
And I think the Beatles are going to have a resonance.
They're going to be having heart attack. So you remember that Martin Scorsese film, Lauren? No, Bucks. No, who said that? That was Tom. Tom said that. The Rolling Stones, that Martin Scorsese film. And we saw it, an advert for it when we went to see the movie Avatar, and it was on those huge 360 screens, right? So it's like there was a Mick Jagger, his full head must have been 30 feet high, and I never, ever want to see Mick Jagger's face 30 feet. And, you know, Keith Richards is like, oh, stop, no. I'll watch this on the small screen. I don't need to see those deep, you know, they look like mountain ranges.
Oh, that's like when TV went HD, you could see every blemish, and you didn't want to see
that's what
anything.
this was. It's like 3D, 360, like, you know, peripheral vision is all gone. Oh, Invisible Hearts. Who are you? I like that name. What are you saying? I should probably read it before I throw this up here. I have been reading Strange Tales from Make Do Studio 2. I have one about the cricket son. Oh, okay. On my list to learn and tell. Invisible Hearts.
Strange Tales.
That sounds interesting. Kevin's making a note of that. He dived right down there with his pen, and I'm going to probably do the same thing. Yeah, and Joey Talbot, her cousin and her used to sing Beatles songs at every family gathering. Oh, that must have been exciting.
I just hope there's a memory with the Beatles all the time. You know, the Beatles deserve their mainstay.
But they weren't around for that long, if you think about it.
That's true. That's true.
They weren't there that long at all. What was
they're
it?
like the character in the story. I mean,
that's true. Yeah, yeah. And that film that came out about everyone forgot the Beatles apart from a select few, and that guy starts playing He's playing Beatles songs.
I haven't seen that. I need to see it.
Oh dear, you do have to see that. That is such a good film. That is a really good film. I loved it to death. It was really, really good.
Well, it's like there's a video floating around of the National Storytelling Festival's 10th anniversary. And have you seen it yet?
No.
Oh, I think Connie Reagan Blake has it up, and you can see Jay O'Callaghan very young, and also as you watch it, it's like 30 minutes. You can see how story has changed, and you can see how it's remained the same. But you know, you got a young Ed Stuyvesant there, you got a Chuck Larkin, you got all these other people, and you know, we need to be open to the change. Is the 10th year is the Beatles coming forward, I guess.
Yeah, they'll come back. You know, it's like fashion.
Yes,
it all comes back. And people.
Well, someone once said to me that, you know, oh yeah, storytelling is really big this year at this conference. I like it had a year. You know, I'm like, like next year will be something different. I'm like, storytelling's been around, it'll stay around, and there'll always be people that want to know. Howling Wolf and Muddy Waters, yeah, Lauren, definitely. And Mississippi John Hurt. I mean, I love some of his work. And Billie Holiday is, you know, people start
Billie Holiday. Gosh, Billie Holiday's amazing. It took me a long time. She was my Guinness of music. I had to take small sips of her for a long time before it was just like I can listen to her like straight. But ironically enough, I could listen to Nina Simone all day long.
Oh, there you go.
And some people can't listen.
Is there any Coltrane in there? Come on, go to the crossroads.
Yeah, John Coltrane. Yeah, Art Blakey. Who else do I have? I am Horace Silver. I love Horace Silver. And then Chet Baker, he was another one of my favorite. My dad was so my parents divorced when I was about 6. So my dad, he was into cool jazz. So a lot of that like Horace Silver and Chet Baker type stuff. And I got myself into Coltrane.
So Simon, I was at Pigeon Forge, Tennessee, and I was going to do storytelling, and I was opening for an act, and so I did some stories for about 25 minutes, and there were a lot of people, and they said, "Ladies and gentlemen, next up, the Charlie Daniels Band." And so I went backstage with Charlie Daniels. He had
did not really?
Yeah, he had a fifth of whiskey on one side of his signing table, and then the Holy Bible on the other. And he was the nicest man in the world. He was fun.
Yeah. So when I worked for WorldCom, if anyone remembers that telephone company that was very big for about 10 minutes, and then Bernie Ebbers, the founder and CEO, kind of lost his marbles a little bit, I think. We had the last every year they would have a big celebration, and all of the staff, apart from like emergency staff, went somewhere, and I was invited. I was lucky enough to be in part of that last one that they ever had. But this was before they combined with MCI. Grateful Dead, no thank you. Sorry, not my cup of tea at all.
I've seen them twice. You have to appreciate what they have done.
I do appreciate them. There are people who I know very close to me who are very big Grateful Dead fans, and I have seen them. I think I've seen them twice.
I've seen them twice.
And I've seen Fish more times than I would have liked to have done.
I've never seen Fish.
Because again, I have people very close to me that are very much into that, and it's not my thing at all. It really isn't my thing at all. But WorldCom, yes. And so we were staying at the Grand Ole Opry Hotel, right, where they give you a map to find your way around. Right? And so we have pretty much we haven't even taken over the hotel because the hotel's so big. But we were taken to the Grand Ole Opry, and we had two bands lined up to play. The opener was Huey Lewis and the News, and the main act was Reba McEntire.
Seriously?
Seriously, yeah. WorldCom paid for those two bands to play. Now, here's the thing. I'm not a huge country fan, right? I'm really not. And I wasn't really looking forward to Reba McEntire, but I was really curious about Huey Lewis and the News because I grew up listening to him, Back to the Future, and all that kind of stuff. So I'll go, and so like most of WorldCom went to see that, I think. Right, and there was a whole bunch of people that went to see Reba because Reba was really big at the time, and Huey Lewis came out and he started off. He says, first of all, before we play anything, I want to say thank you to WorldCom because it's always been my dream to play on this stage, and the type of music that I play, I'll never ever get to play on this stage, and you made a dream come true. So tonight is very special for me, and I want to make it special for you. And the whole band played their heart out on that stage, and it was absolutely phenomenal. There was so much love and appreciation for the place, for the venue, and they were playing for that, right? I mean, and they just did a knockout job. Even though it was Huey Lewis and the News, it was absolutely brilliant, and hats off to them. And then Reba McEntire came out, and her show was, I have to say, one of the worst shows I have ever seen live. She strutted down the stage, singing a song, and she'd turn around, and then she'd strut the other way back, singing a song, and she'd turn around, and that was it. That was the whole show, and it was just like, wow. I watched two songs, and I'm like, I'm going. I'm just like, I don't need to stick around for this. Seeing one, you've seen it all. And when I saw Katie Lang live, right, this was in London.
That would have been amazing.
Oh my gosh, it was, because this was like when Angels with a Lariat came out, like her first big album, right? So the band is on the stage and they're playing this intro, right? And it's like this super fast song. Katie Lang came out of the wings 10 feet off the ground to land on the stage playing a guitar.
Wow.
She flew onto the stage.
That doesn't beat me seeing Pink, who did all kinds of circus acrobats from high wire and flying in. It was amazing, but not. But I'd love to see Katie Lang.
Yeah, Katie Lang's. She's amazing.
Simon, you might be interested. Do you remember 10,000 Maniacs?
Yes, I do.
So I loved Natalie Merchant's work, even though she's a little, she was a little snobbery with one of her people that she worked with. But she's done a collection of stories based on nursery rhymes, songs based on nursery rhymes. A 2 CD set. You might want to check it out. They're really old tales. And I saw her perform at a conference, and I liked it. It was good.
Huh. That's cool. Whoa, hang on. Don Buck Creasy says, I open for Sammy Smith. Help me make it through the night in the early
yeah.
Dude.
That must have been fun. That story alone is worth hearing.
Yeah.
Good to see you, Buck.
Buck, do you want to come on this show and tell us about that?
There we go.
Friday? Yeah. I want to have you on the show anyway, but did I mention that to you already, or has it just been kicking around my head? Yeah, I need to have you on the show. Grey summer. Well, that's any summer in Portland, Oregon. I lived in Portland, Oregon for 5 years. Yay! He said yes. All right, but I'll be in touch soon, and we'll figure out a date, and we'll have you on the show. Now, if you've never met Buck Creasy, you need to. But we met, and we were like just online. We were like online friends for a while, and then I met him in Arizona at the NSN thing. He is tall. He is a big guy, and I have to say that when I first met Buck Creasy, a little tremor went through my body because I was just like, oh, he's a big guy. He's so tall. I mean,
he's like a teddy bear, Simon.
I know, but like when you see a guy that big and broad, it scared the crap out of me. But then, yeah, he is. He's a big teddy bear. He's huge. So yeah, I hope you don't mind me saying that, but you did. You scared me the first time I met you in person, but I knew that you were a good guy because we spent time on the phone and done stuff online. So anywho, well, folks, I think have we bored you enough? Is it? He says he's a dangerous teddy bear.
I agree.
I don't know. Buck is a giant. He is. I think it's freaking awesome. Anyway, I think we've spent enough of your time. Thank you very much for being here, and I know that other people are doing things at 2 o'clock, so I don't want to let encroach on that too
Go
much.
see Simon TBD on Tuesday.
Yeah,
Make sure you do.
there's Rachel's doing something on Crossroads today at 2.
Yeah, I did notice that.
Yeah. So go and do that. So yes, love to see you next Friday.
Debut Sunday.
Did anyone tell you, Kevin, that you're a shameless publicist?
I was a door-to-door salesman when I was 14 years old, and
that
I
makes
haven't
perfect.
stopped.
I would say that's a very true statement. Yes, I can tell you who's next Friday. My next Friday with Friends. It's going to be the anniversary of when I started doing Friday with Friends.
Oh, nice.
And my guest is fellow Brit Claire Hennessy. So
I've heard great things. I hope to meet her one day.
Well, she calls herself the Bonkers Brit, which really killed me because I thought I'm the Bonkers Brit, but I never called myself that. And so she's calling herself that, and it's fine because she's freaking awesome, and I love her a lot. So yes, we'll see you next Friday, the anniversary edition of Friday with Friends. Kevin, thanks for being a super duper guest. Thanks for sharing your story. Thanks for being here with us. Love you all. See you soon.